Welcome to another video review filmed in Marco's International Studio, which some people also know as my parents' dining room. These days I'm in Italy, I'm visiting my parents who live here, and so I'm also taking this trip as an opportunity to explore some game designs by Italians, or in any case some European game designs that I had not known of otherwise when I was in the US, and I'm discovering these games simply because I went around the few game stores around my hometown that have games, and in particular that have hobby games, so stores that do not consider Risk or Monopoly as the apotheosis of gaming sophistication. And I'm looking for Italian European games that I haven't known before. One such game that I discovered yesterday is Dark Tales, an Italian game that also exists in international versions. So I'm going to show the Italian version, but if you do not speak Italian, it should be easy to find another version. There's a Spanish one, French, English, Russian one. And this is a game inspired by the classic fairy tales, however, filtered through a dark, scary, and also sexualized filter. That is because, well, there clearly is a sort of disturbing element in classic fairy tales, animals eating people, weird spells, so there is that potential there. And also because, heck, it is 2016, so everything has to be darker and more sexualized than it was before. Everything has to be, adult, and everybody has to be brooding, that kind of style. This being said, I may sound ironic, and I am, but I also have to say that the art is quite impressive. So I may make fun of art that takes classic tales and turns them into sexualized and dark images, but it works. It is very effective art. As for the game, it is a card game, 2 to 4 players. It is a game in the filler category. It is very simple. It plays quite quickly. It's not complex at all, and well, let me show you how it works. But actually, to give you in a nutshell an idea, it is a game where you play cards that will evoke situations dealing with classic fairy tales, and you simply create card interactions to score points. So even when you look past the art and some of the interactions, the game is overall fairly abstract. You have some tokens representing items that the players can use: armor, swords, magic wands, and coins. You have a main deck of cards, and we'll talk about that later. And then, very interesting, you have 2 decks of cards that you use to set the parameters of the story. You can draw a random card from the A deck and another one from the B deck before the game starts. I guess you can also just choose. And the A cards that you selected or drew randomly will tell you which items mean what and do what during the game that you are starting. So actually the value or the meaning, the function of the item changes depending on this card. I like that very much because right there you have potential for replay value. For example, if this is the active card, then you can discard an armor and a sword during the game to draw 2 cards and to score 3 points. Or, again, if this is the card that is used in the game, then I can discard a magic one and a monster, which is a way of eliminating monsters, and I score the 3 points, and I also gain a coin. Another card would do different things. For example, in this card, the item that destroys monsters is the sword. I discard a sword from my personal supply, a monster from anywhere in play, and I score 3 victory points this time. So it's a different reward from here. Here, discarding magic wands simply gives you a card, a coin, and a victory point. So as you can see, things really change. This one, for example, interesting. If I discard an armor while I have a monster in play, then my opponents must discard a card from their hand or lose a victory point. Very interesting and different things that they can do. So you will have a card telling you what the items do in that game, and you also will have a card telling you about some specific unique scoring conditions at the end of the game. For example, if this is the card in play, At the end of the game, a set of 3 coins plus a wand is worth 12 victory points, which is quite impressive. If this is the card, at the end of the game, each set of armor and sword can be exchanged for 3 coins. You add those to the coins you may have already accrued during the game, and then you score points based on how many coins you have at that point. This one works in similar ways. You exchange sets of things for victory points, but also you have victory points at the end based on the coins that you have and the number of cards that you have. This is important. Usually you just burn through your hand of cards because there's no real reason to save cards until the end of the game, unless this is the case. So the dynamics of the game can change quite a bit, and I like that very much. As for the game itself, you shuffle these cards together in a single deck, you deal 3 to each player, and the game is ready to start. Also, actually, one more thing, you take a card representing a notte, a knight, and you put it face up in play at the beginning of the game. The game is simplicity itself. I can teach it to you in 10 seconds. At the beginning of your turn, you draw a card. If you have a token that you want to use, you spend it and you activate the corresponding effect. Then you play a card, you implement the effects, and your turn is over. Next player repeats the sequence. You continue like this until the deck is depleted. At that point, you count points. Maybe that was more than 10 points, than 10 seconds, but you get the idea. It is a super linear game. The meat in the game, of course, comes from the effects, and part of the experience of the game also comes from the art. I told you this was nice art, so actually let me show you some of the illustrations here. We have the Dark Lord, the dragon, the knight, the fairy, the wizard, the stoltezza. How do I translate that? I have a brain short circuit here. Well, it's the opposite of wisdom. It's not stupidity. I just can't think of it right now. Giorno, day, the day. As you can imagine, there will only be a day or night card. When a day is played, the night cards are removed from the play area and vice versa. Young hero, the princess, the gypsy, the secret ally, old wise man, and so on and so forth. Oh, the witch, the spell. Quite impressive art. Now, as I said, really the meat, the core of the game is created by the game effects. You have your hand of 3 cards. You get one at the beginning of your turn, and then during the game, the size of your hand may change based on game effects, and you play one. Now you look at the bottom of the card. The symbol here tells you where the card goes. The symbol means that the card goes in the play area in the middle of the table. Cards that are there don't belong to anybody, but they're still considered in play for game effects. And this area can get quite cluttered, so actually the rulebook recommends that if you have multiple cards of the same type, you stack them, so you still see how many you have, but they're not spread around chaotically. This is for these cards here that count as in play in the central area. Cards with this symbol are also considered in play once you play them, but they go in your own personal area. And they usually have recurring effects. For example, this one, if it is day, is worth 2 victory points at the end of your turn. You get 2 points at the end of your turn, at the end of each turn in which this guy is in your play area, and it is day. Not now, it is night. So cards that are here or here, they're equally in play, so they can be targeted by game effects, but they work differently because these ones belong to you and give you benefits, these ones do not. Finally, you have cards with the symbol here, usually events. They are discarded, but not all cards that are discarded immediately, they go into the discard pile, are events. Some, for example, are monsters that just do a cameo appearance. The dragon does his things, which actually means that you can discard a location and a male character that is in play, and you score 2 victory points for each card that is discarded in such a way. But then after he goes there and torches a hero and destroys a place, the guy immediately leaves. This is how it works, just to give you a sense of some of the effects. The merchant, you draw 2 cards when you play it, and then you score 2 victory points for each merchant that is in play. This is why it's important to know how many are there. The princess allows you to take a male character in your hand from any play area and add it to your hand. You have cards that allow you to take those tokens. For example, the Cursed Castle gives you an armor or a coin. The Cave gives you a wand or a coin. This guy, remember, gives you 2 victory points if he's in your play area and it is day. This is the dark side, the dark creature, the creature of the night, gives you 2 victory points if the creature of the night is in your play area and it is night. So as you can see, if you had this combo, is very powerful because you're going to score points every turn. Imagine if you had 2 of them, but also this game is functionally a monster, so there may be game effects that allow you to destroy the monster. Remember, for example, that this is the case. I put this card here, so I want to score points. Actually, it turns out that my opponent gets a sword and then later turn uses it. So actually, I lose the card and the opponent scores points for eliminating the monster. Here, there's another powerful card if it is day. But again, remember, there are cards that allow you to destroy male characters, such as this one. The princess allows you to take a male character from somebody. So there are definitely game effects that interact very well with one another. I would say each card has a very specific effect, and each card has a designator killer, has a card that can target it. And so things are pretty well interconnected, I would say. Something that I like is also that some of these effects are more general. They always work, they're always good. For example, when you have this guy, no matter what's happening, you can take an armor or a sword. And so these characters here that give you stuff, they're always good. Some of the cards are much more situational, but also if the situation presents itself, if the stars are right, then they are much more powerful. So, for example, we have these 2 cards. They have the same effect, just one is tailored to the day and one to the night. If we have the Wisdom of the King, you take a card when you play this event. Then if it is day, you score 2 victory points for each location in play. So 2 things need to be here. It needs to be day, and also you need to have a lot of locations. But if that is the case, this card is very powerful. And this is the same thing. You get a card, and then you score 1 victory point per location if it is day, 2 victory points if it is night. So situational but powerful. So I really like this. The cards seem to be pretty balanced. Early on as I played, I didn't realize that you could target cards in the play areas, the players, so these cards seem to be overpowered. But when I saw that each card really can be destroyed by another card, things started working well and the game plays very smoothly. General assessment, it's a good game. It's not a great game, but it is a good filler. My wife agreed to play it, which is great. She doesn't usually play games that are too complex. This one seemed to be in a range, and it turned out to be that it isn't the kind of the game that doesn't overwhelm new players or casual players with a long explanation of the rules. They figure out the effects as they go. So a first game is just to teach the game, really, and the second game starts being, well, interesting. It's a game that people can learn easily. It plays quickly because in each turn you only have 2 or 3 things that are interesting. They're not always obvious. They're interesting things that again emerge. There's some hidden depth that emerges after a while, but it's easy to miss at the beginning. So you have those 2 or 3 options that do not overwhelm you, so you shouldn't have analysis paralysis. But it can be interesting because maybe I have a card that I like to play now, but looking at your behavior, then I realized that a card that may give me a good effect, such as this one, in reality can just offer a target for you to create a good effect. So there's some hidden depth here in the way the cards are interconnected, and there is some studying what the opponents are doing to figure out when is the best way to trigger a certain effect. To maximize your abilities. So there is that interactive element, which is both direct, I'm doing stuff to destroy what you have, and indirect, in which I'm trying to study what you do, and in which I'm trying to gauge what you may have, and therefore then play around that with the cards that I have. The luck element is there, no doubt, but that is typical of so many card games, and this is just a game that falls in that category. But again, there are so many cards that get in the way of so many other cards that rarely will you have a case where a player has all the quote-unquote powerful cards and a player has all the quote-unquote weak cards. It's more like a player has the powerful cards and the player has good cards that simply do not mesh in that situation, do not allow you to attack the other player. But again, that shouldn't be something that occurs too often. It is a simple game, mind you. It is not a game that will blow your mind, but it's a very good looking game, and it's a very pleasant and simple one. As a simple filler, I would recommend it. Again, it's not too deep. Don't expect it to be more than it can be, but it is pleasant for what it is. Oh, actually, these components, I don't know if I acknowledge them, probably not. These are simply used to keep track of the victory point that you scored during the game. One thing, the deck is some 50 cards, which is about right. I would say it's about right, really, because the game shouldn't last too long. It is not deep and complex enough to hold your attention for more than, I would say, 20 minutes or so, which is more or less what it takes to play. With experienced players, even less. But somehow, after a while, you do not have many effects. Again, you do not have simply many cards, so it can feel a little repetitive after 3-4 games. Well, I know what the wisdom does. I know how to use it. I know when not to use it. So things can get a little predictable and a little repetitive, a little too obvious. As I said, there is an interesting element in having a range of choices that does not overwhelm you, but then after a while, those choices may become a little too straightforward. I know, however, that those expansions, I simply don't have them because I wanted to try the basic game before I decided whether to commit to expansions or not. I think I like the basic game enough that I will look into the expansions, and I think that the basic game will start feeling a little too lean, a little too basic, a little too bare bone for me to keep playing it without the expansions. So I'll look into them. I think the game has good potential, but I enjoy playing it. If I never play it again, I'm happy for the bunch of games that I got out of this. I think that to keep it fresh, to keep it interesting, you will need expansions, so I'll look into those and I'll consider adding some expansions to the game and see if the expansions do keep the game young and fresh for longer. This is all for today, or at least this is all for this video. This was my review of Dark Tales, a simple, not very well known Italian game based on a dark take on traditional fairy tales. It's a simple linear filler with some very interesting elements, such as the changing parameters for the game with good art. It's fun, not too immersive, not too demanding. For a filler, it is a good one.